Welcome to the Filmcast review of No One Will Save You. I'm going to read the plot summary from the internet. Bryn finds solace within the walls of the home where she grew up until she's awakened one night by strange noises from unearthly intruders. This movie is directed by Brian Duffield. It's streaming right now on Hulu. I knew nothing about this movie other than that it was doing really well at screenings, and also that our buddy Dan Trachtenberg recommended it to us recently on an After Dark, but I was really looking forward to checking it out.
People were
Devindra
talking about it
Hardawar-
on Twitter. Like, it was all over the place. Yeah.
Devindra, I'm curious, but we, in general, I think we had relatively few expectations. It's not based off of like existing IP that everyone's aware of. A lot of people know Caitlin Dever from shows like Justified, but she's not somebody who, I think, honestly has really done something like this before, something quite like this.
She's so good in Justified.
So good.
So good.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm just trying to say, I feel like I personally had very few expectations going into this, other than that it might be really good. So Devindra Hardawar, I am really curious. What did you think of No One Will Save You?
Well, I heard the initial pitch, which is that this is basically an alien invasion movie. And I kind of felt like what I felt going into the movie Nope. It's just like, oh man, this is my dream of the 90s. My nightmares of the 90s, for some reason, was all about aliens. And I don't know what was going on in the culture at the time. I don't know if it was X-Files or we were just really bored, So alien abductions were like a big thing in the 90s. And
it feels like they've gone away a little bit, right? And like
that story. But
like
now we have like video evidence of like these vehicles or like these things in the air. And everyone's like, oh yeah, they exist. We don't know what they are, but so it is kind of funny that the world we're living in now is a little bit different. But anyway, I grew up watching movies like Communion and Fire in the Sky, and so like something about that idea was always just a little terrifying to me. So to have
let's pause and just like the essential elements of the story, right, are green or gray men, very slender.
Yes.
Well, Little Green Men is the title of an X-Files episode, but green or gray men, very slender in build, big eyes, huge skulls, telekinetic powers, and they take you up to this ship with tractor beams.
Well, they come at night, and you're paralyzed, and you can't do anything. And just like that concept always sort of grabbed me as a kid.
And they like experiment on your body or implant things in your body or whatever. Like
I saw Fire in the Sky way too young, and
me too. That was amazing movie.
That movie is questionable, but that idea, that scene of the abduction is just like somebody was talking about. It's like perhaps the most accurate like representation of just like what a complete alien force would do to a human being. Like, what do we do to animals, right? We don't care about their well-being. We don't really care about their pain. We just carve. It's terrifying. Anyway, this movie, I was excited that the director of Spontaneous was kind of diving into this territory. I love Caitlin Dever. Just love the idea of it. I thought this movie was fantastic. It does sort of expand on the idea of the Greys, and we'll talk about some of that in spoilers. And I just take issue with like removing the purity of that a little bit, but this is fun. This is like a really fun thriller, and I think it leans into the idea of alien abductions certainly differently than Nope did. And I'm not going to spoil that movie, but there's certainly
Devindra's like, aliens are one very specific thing. We've never seen them before, but they're one very specific thing.
Listen, Jeff, there are tomes.
How dare you deviate? How dare you deviate from the lore?
The sanctity of
the lore. Project
Alien
Blue Book, Jeff. We could talk about Project Blue Book. We could talk about Benny and Barney Hill. We could talk about all these things. And like the lore, it is like a weirdly consistent thing. Like if you delve deeper into alien lore, then they talk about like, oh, there's these like almost sort of like Nordic looking blonde aliens. I don't know. But anyway, the thing that's in my heart are the Greys, and they're terrifying and still terrify me. I think this movie does a fantastic job. It is essentially a silent film too, and it really just goes to show like Brian Duffield's skill in terms of like framing and telling a story visually. And also all this stuff is very fitting for a character who, I think feels very alien in her own world in a certain way too. Like, so I like the layers of meaning here. I like the just sheer execution of what's going on. This movie is a blast. Like I love a horror movie like this. And I love that we're sort of just re-exploring this concept, because the inherent idea of an alien abduction story, I think, is terrifying. And maybe it was Signs. Signs was like the last one where it was that's it. We're kind of done with this era. That's a terrifying movie that I think a lot of people were always like, it was a contentious film, but I always thought that was like the perfect representation of like what always terrified me about this idea of alien abduction. So anyway, this movie is fun. Maybe not quite exactly what I was terrified of as a kid, but I think it's a good time.
It does not honor the legacy of the Greys, but it's still a great time.
In Communion, just like a little eye at a door sill, like in the door frame. Terrifying. Guys, come on.
Jeff Kanata, your thoughts on No One Will Save You?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say my thoughts on No One Will Save You are best summed up in the form of a limerick. The director so deftly conferred every thrill and chill as they occurred. With just sights and sounds, this film so astounds that I'm also at a loss for words.
Wow.
Nice.
Nicely done, Jeff. Nicely done.
Thank you. This movie rocks. It blew me away. I think this movie is amazing. It is a gimmick movie, right? The gimmick is no talking, no dialogue, right? I think this movie is incredible, not because of its gimmick, but in spite of its gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the gimmick adds anything to this movie. In fact, I kind of wish there was some dialogue in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
But somehow it transcends that limitation and that self-imposed limitation that I kind of don't understand. Like, it's a cool trick. It's a cool, you guys differ from me in that I think a oneer in a movie is always cool. Like, I've never seen a oneer and went, that was superfluous.
How do we differ about that?
I thought you would say that sometimes a oneer feels a little gratuitous.
Sometimes on a rare occasion,
yes,
like
I'm saying I never feel that way.
Like
Jeff is saying his critical faculties just zero in that respect when it comes to oneers.
99.9% of the time, I think a oneer is amazing and I celebrate it, and it's I'm impressed.
And that 0.1%, we differ, baby. We differ. But the point I'm trying to make here is I don't think this trick, though it is impressively pulled off here, because as I indicated in the limerick, I think there is a lot of story conveyed in a way that you don't usually convey story, right? It is like a silent movie. We get things. I mean, there are a couple of cheats. We have people writing things down and the camera's like, look at the words. It's like, nah. I mean, just say them if you want. If you want
it
words
makes
in the movie.
Why the main character doesn't speak, really, right? Maybe everybody else, like maybe we could have had.
Yeah, let's just say that I will. I have more to say in spoilers, but like I think that the whether or not, like, whatever justification, if there was one for why no one is speaking, felt inadequate to me. Let's put it that way. Or the justification for making a movie where there's so little dialogue.
At a certain point, it really, it just sort of stands out.
Yes.
Right? It draws attention to itself.
It draws attention to itself. I agree.
And yet, I think this movie is phenomenal. Like, it doesn't hold it back from being brilliant and riveting. And, Devindra's right. Yeah, the era before the 90s, it was Close Encounters, it was E.T., it was the aliens are coming, but aren't they great? Isn't it amazing? It was wonder and awe and good feelings. And then the 90s came around.
Star Trek.
Yeah, and then the 90s came around and it's like, no, they're coming to get you, man. They're coming to
No, I mean, sci-fi
you,
aliens were terrifying for decades, like the 50s, 60s, and 70s. It was like the 80s were like, oh, they're cute. That's nice. How about that? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think this one leans all the way back into that notion of this is terror. And this is a horror movie. It's PG-13, but this is a horror movie. And I will tell you, as somebody who watched this movie, my wife out of town, alone in my big house, my children asleep, there's a bump in the house and you go, it really does get under your skin because the filmmaking is so stellar. It's so top notch. The creation of tension, the unexpected moments. There were, I would say, at least two, maybe three moments where I said out loud, holy shit. I mean, some incredibly surprising, jarring, thrilling, spine-tingling turns that happen in this movie. And it's just great to see it. And it really is I mean, I love the fact that it's called No One Will Save You, right? This is a survival movie. This is one person in a situation. What are you going to do? There's no one coming for you. There's no one coming to save you. How do you handle it? What do you do? And I really was transported, especially alone in my house at that moment, transported into that experience and being like, oh my gosh, this really would be a harrowing experience. And I will tell you, the process of watching this movie to me was half hour in. I can't believe there's an hour left of this movie. Where are they going to go? 50 minutes in. I can't believe there's 40 more minutes of this movie. Where can they go from here? You know, an hour and 10 in. I cannot believe there's 20 more minutes of this movie. Where could it possibly go from here? It just kept amping up, and it gets to the point, it crescendos like 4 times where you go, well, that's where most movies end, right there. But there's 20 more minutes. What happens now?
I got shades of no wonder Dan Trachtenberg liked this. I got shades of like 10 Cloverfield Lane
Totally.
with this movie. So similar vibes.
It's a thrill ride. It is so well executed. It is tense. It is awesome. You know, it takes this very familiar trope and really puts a fresh coat of paint on it. It feels so bold and interesting and unique. I think this might end up on my top 10 of the year. I loved No One Will Save You. I loved it.
I basically agree with 100% of what you said, Jeff, which is a pretty rare statement for me. I think it's...
Usually it's 99.9,
right? The only thing I think I'll add is I think Caitlin Dever is incredible in this. I think it is difficult to do the range of what she is trying to accomplish, to be joyful, to be sad, to be heartbroken, to be in terror for most of this film without dialogue. That is very, very challenging.
Yeah. She goes through the whole face of emoji, in this movie.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I think it was...
She didn't have to memorize anything, though, Dave. It's super easy.
Yeah.
I think it was... there's this movie I talk about sometimes called The Five Obstructions, which is like a really amazing movie. The point of the movie is like, hey, this Lars von Trier tells this director, like, hey, remake this movie, but with like a different obstruction each time. Like, and he'll like, no shot longer than 12 frames. Like in this one, it's got to be animated, or like, he'll like insert a constraint, and then you get to see like the beauty and interestingness and inventiveness that comes as a result of
resourcefulness.
The resourcefulness that comes as a result of constraint. Now, in that movie, it's set up as an experiment. Hey, we're doing obstructions. Whereas in this movie, I think there's less of a justification for it. But despite that, like the fact that they decided to do it that way, it does allow you to see what is possible without dialogue, what is possible for someone like Caitlin Dever, what can she accomplish without dialogue? And it's really extraordinary. I think she is ridiculously good in this. And it's very different than the roles I've seen her play in Justified and Party Down and, other things that she's been in.
I mean, she's very good at playing tough. And this is a movie that does kind of tap into her innate toughness and grit.
Grit, but also a lot of vulnerability as well, and I think it's
for sure.
I think she's extraordinary. So and the only other thing I want to highlight too is that I assume this is a relatively low budget movie, but I felt like they allocated the visual effects and separately the special effects budgets into the correct places. Like I felt like there were a lot of big, great moments that they wanted to convey, and in general, few exceptions, but in general, I felt they chose the right mix of what to show practically, what to show CG, just based off of what I can tell from watching the movie. And so really great job on that front from Brian Duffield as well. So there's a lot more stuff I want to discuss in spoilers, but I think we all love the movie. So let's get into spoilers.
I hope everybody watches this.
Yes,
I really
check
do.
it out.
It deserves to be
right
like
there
a
on Hulu.
Prey level hit for Hulu,
Agreed. Spoilers for No One Will Save You starting right now. All right. Devindra, what's your beef with the Greys in this movie? Let's start with that.
Well, it's more like, the Greys. We start with the Greys. Oh, they're terrifying. This one is like it's telekinetic powers could like float really creepily.
You didn't like the spindly fingers?
I like the spindly fingers.
Yeah,
I think
those
it's
are cool.
perfectly fine. Then we get to there's just monsters. There's just a goddamn spider monster gray. And I was also thinking like, why do you need a spider monster gray? Because it's sort of like the commander. It's like communicating with the ships. It doesn't have telekinesis. It like has to run and chase things. So you have one creature that is all powerful, can control things with their minds. And then you also have the monster things. I just cannot quite gel the two. I don't know. I don't understand like what's the hierarchy of this society of the Greys.
Right.
Okay.
No, that's fair. And look, I have a few complaints with the movie. Okay.
Yeah.
One of them is it felt like maybe one encounter too many. Like, I
Sure,
don't think you
sure.
need all those. Like, we've
Mhm.
already made the point of like each encounter is really well done. But by the time like the third or fourth one happens, I'm like, okay, I think I get
Mhm.
where this is going. Now, I will say that, putting that aside, second related complaint about that, by the way, actually, is the science comparison is good because it is a little bit ridiculous to me that these
Yeah.
creatures that have mastered interstellar space travel and have telekinetic powers can be
Yeah.
like so easily foiled by this person. Like,
I didn't expect them to have a knife,
right. Ooh, I hope they didn't bring a knife to a telekinesis fight. Anyway, so that did great on me as well. But putting that aside,
Mhm.
each individual sequence is really well done, and there is one heart-stoppingly amazing sequence, in my opinion, which is
Mhm.
the sequence when she gets basically caught up in that red tractor beam, and
Unbelievable.
like the little creature, like the little parasite thing, goes up to her mouth. The conception and execution of that is just
Really well
so amazing. Like when she goes in the beam, she can't move, but she can still like blink and stuff. And the sound design, like everything goes super muffled. It's like, oh, it's just so
Pure night terror. That's like
amazing.
being in a night terror.
Yeah,
Basically,
it's
the
like
sort of like idea.
sleep paralysis, basically, right? Like
I think
yeah.
that entire sequence, even before that, all the beam stuff in the house,
Mhm.
the way she sees the she starts A-teaming her house hard. She's like,
yeah,
fuck these guys. I'm gonna like I'm gonna get ready for this shit. And then she sees the little nail come out and she immediately dies behind the thing. And then everything after that, with like beams coming in the house, stuff levitating, her
beam coming to us and like trapping her hand in the beam and like all that.
believable.
Yeah.
And all of the beam stuff I thought was so neat. I mean, obviously we've seen beam from sky in lots of things.
This is a blue beam in sky I can get behind.
Yeah, finally.
Yeah.
I mean, that moment
Scary
where the one dude who's being controlled falls
Mhm.
halfway in it, his
Yeah.
dead back. Oh, dude, it's
Yeah.
just so well done. And again, taking something that is very familiar
Mhm.
and having a fresh take on it is so neat.
Yeah.
I think it's more of the simpler things, like early on, just the fridge sequence, which is something I will think about for a while too. That is just pure placement of the fridge and the door to even allow that thing to be happening. And then, after a certain point, she's kind of breathing kind of hard. Like if you were some sort of like interstellar being, you could probably tell that there was a creature here. Maybe you would have the technology
like
to
you can
scan
move,
a house.
You can move things with your mind, but you don't know that they're right there.
That
Anyway,
they're right
whatever.
there. I do like the sort of like the fingers over the fridge
So
door,
good.
just creepy enough, and her
So
getting out
good.
of that. Like, so that's where when the movie started to escalate, I was like, okay, I'm on board, but I really like they got the simple things down really right.
That moment where
was
she
stunned.
slams its head
Yep.
with the cupboard. Ugh.
Yep.
Right. I was stunned
So
by
bad.
that scene where like she tries to run away and the door flies off of its hinge, like its frame, and like slams into her, almost knocking her out. That was like one of the first big wow moments of the movie for me. I was just stunned by how the physicality of that whole sequence. It looked like they actually ripped the door off its hinge and just slammed it into Caitlin Deaver, and I was like, I hope she's okay. I don't think they actually. I don't think she's hurt, but I'm just saying.
Slamming her to the ceiling too was very
yeah.
physical and visceral.
So we got to talk about the ending of the movie. Okay, so what happens in this movie is her whole, like, a bunch of people in her town seem like they are now in control of, like, under the control of the aliens.
The introduction of that in the bus, by the way, perfection. So
it's like an Invasion of the Body Snatchers prequel.
Right.
Yep.
The bus scene, by the way, was the first scene where I was like, okay, really, people should be talking in this scene.
People
right?
should be talking.
Yes.
Somebody should say something.
Yeah, like at the police station, that's fine. Maybe they don't like her, but like in the bus, I'm like, this is weird that no one's talking.
Her self-imposed silence makes sense for her as a character.
For sure.
Yeah, but
I was also looking for like at the end of the movie, some explanation for why no one's talking. Like maybe they're all possessed or something. Like something would explain why they're no. But that didn't really happen in quite that way. Anyway, so the townspeople are under control, invasion of body snatcher style. You find out that basically everyone in the town hates her because she accidentally killed her friend when she was little 10 years ago.
Oof.
In a fight, she swung a rock at her and knocked her friend out, and she died.
The reveal of that too is so
really well done. Yeah.
Exquisite. It's just
with the red color and then time freezing when it happened. It's amazing. It's really well done. This happens because she's been taken up to the alien ship and they're probing her and revealing her memories and stuff like that. And by the way, like I called out the red tractor beam situation earlier, but the match cut when she the thing goes into her mouth and then she's instantly in another place and then she rips the thing out and then she's instantly back. I was like, this is amazing work. Okay, so then she gets taken up to the alien ship. They probe her memories and then they have a little conference. And they're like, "Hey, guess what? We don't need
a little TED talk. Yeah.
We don't need to mind control this person. We're good. We don't need to mind control." They put her back down to Earth, and then at the end of the movie, she is living happily with the people in town who are now all being mind controlled. But she is not. She has been left to her own devices. So I am curious if you had any interpretation of what goes on there. I think two explanations I think are plausible are, number one, the aliens decided they don't have to mind control her. She's going to be happy just to be among the living again. Number two is the aliens had compassion on her, right? They're like, hey, this woman has had a really difficult life, so we don't need to subject her to this and she's going to be just fine the way she is. But I'm curious if any of those resonate with you or if you guys had a different interpretation.
It didn't quite hit me that she wasn't being mind controlled at the end. So I guess that makes a certain amount of sense.
Right.
And
one of the difficulties when you have no dialogue is like you don't know if she's being mind controlled or not at the end. I don't think she was. That was my
No, that makes
some
sense.
of her mannerisms, right? Yeah,
that makes absolute sense. But also, I mean, we are introduced to her basically, creating a dollhouse version of the town and just trying to have her own existence there. Yeah. So,
and the aliens basically made it for her. The aliens basically created that version for her. So
yeah, so it's sort of like, it's very much like Contact, sort of, right? Like the aliens tap into you and reach into your memories and express things to you in certain ways. But yeah, it's creepy and freaky, and I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah, that was my interpretation. Was more the latter of your two options, Dave. Was that it was more that they found the one person in the world for whom body snatching is a better outcome than her life, right? For her. That's the irony is, right, for her having everybody overtaken by aliens is the best possible situation, right? It absolves her, well, not absolves her, but it removes that stigma that has persisted her whole life. She's given a clean slate and is able to live happily and go out of her house and interact with people because no one is holding things against her anymore.
I almost wonder if the aliens are just tired of her. They're like, you've killed, how many of us have you killed? this girl? She's just too much trouble. Let's throw her back out there. I'm not going to deal with this anymore. No more effort on this human.
Maybe it was like a game recognized game situation. They're like, all right, you can kill our guys. We'll
that part, like that part where The Rock decided to help out Vin Diesel. He's like, you know what? I've been tasked to take you in, but you know what? Game recognized game.
Yeah.
Hashtag family with aliens.
All right.
Now she can have a family.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and Jeff, do you think she's under mind control at the end there?
I do not. I thought that she came to some sort of equilibrium, there's an understanding. She's like, hey, you let me live in my, she took whatever the pill is that makes you go back into the Matrix, right? She's like, hey, we're cool.
Yeah.
We're cool.
She's the person that wants to go back into the Matrix.
Yes.
Yeah. And like,
because it's better. It's better than where all the people were angry at her,
Zion sucks. The food sucks at Zion. Okay. Anyway. At the end of the day, it's really, really impressive that Brian Duffield made a movie. Thank you so much for watching this video of the Filmcast. Check out these other videos that we have available, and be sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to get other videos from us in the future.
You can also go to thefilmcast.com to catch all of our audio podcast versions of all of our episodes.
And support this podcast at patreon.com/filmpodcast, where you can sign up for ad-free episodes and exclusive After Darks.
Thanks so much to everyone who makes the Filmcast possible.